so-called flying saucers.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. It's rotating.
Welcome to Kill the Stigma. Today we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to focus on a little bit of history and how the UFO cover-up started. Just a little bit of that, but how it peaked in 1952. We're going to talk about Donald Menzel, an astronomer who was the director of Harvard Observatory, and how he was also in the MJ-12 documents, a controversial document that has many fruits to its name. So we're going to focus on Donald Menzel today. I'm going to play for you guys an old clip from the 50s, Donald Keyhoe, who was somebody who was advocating for UFO transparency. And Mike Wallace interviewing him, and he brings up Donald Menzel. We're going to talk about some coincidences about Donald Menzel. We're going to talk about the Menzel gap. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to show you a few clips. And
misinformation
yeah. Let's go.
Or sightings of objects which seem to be one thing but are in fact another. But you mentioned a Dr. Donald Menzel, who's a professor of astrophysics at Harvard before. Now, I think you will agree that he's one of the world's most distinguished astrophysicists. Is that not so?
I think there are others who are equally capable, but do not agree with him.
He is one of the world's most distinguished astrophysicists, though I think we can agree on that. In any case, he stresses, you see, that pilots are not expert observers, that they, as well as others, can see flying saucers when it's only, to quote him, the wrapper off somebody's lunch blowing around in the air, end quote. But again, let's come back to the point, the most important point, Major Keyhoe, and that is why will the Air Force, why will the United States government withhold information from United States citizens? For what reason?
Because they're treating them like children, the way they did with the H-bomb at first, and the way they've been doing with other things. Now, I'm not attacking the United States Air Force. I'm attacking a small group in there that has been persistently keeping this from the public.
So that right there was a video from 1958. Donald Keyhoe and Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace was basically like, come on, man, it's flying saucer business. Come on. What's going on with you? You know, Donald Keyhoe, you're a serious guy, but what's going on with this? And there he mentions, well, what about Donald Menzel? You know, he's a very high-level astrophysicist, and he says that these things are basically just, mistakes, illusions, hoaxes, and Donald Keyhoe is like, well, there's some others that don't agree, but let's talk about Donald Menzel. I want to talk today about Donald Menzel. So here's my goal with this channel. I want to obviously kill the stigma. I want to talk about facts, history, and the present. So later I'll do a video on the present. I want to focus on the Wilson Davis memo. I'm trying to dissect Jesse Michaels' video with James Fox, which was amazing. Shout out to those two guys. They're awesome. Anyway, Donald Menzel, first elite debunker, super high up, member of MJ-12, whether real or not, I don't know, but that document has so many fruits. Donald Keyhoe, which was in that video that I just showed, he started NICAP, which was like the first, how do you say this, a first organization to look into UFOs, kind of like MUFON. Well, Admiral Hillenkotter, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter, first director of the CIA, helped him with that. Okay, why is the first director of the CIA Donald Keyhoe make an organization to study UFOs? Where are the historians in this? Why is nobody looking at this? Is that we're just going to pretend that didn't happen? First director of the CIA, which his name is also in the MJ-12 document. I thought those documents were a hoax, but the names have so many fruits. They're delicious. Those fruits are delicious, and you cannot ignore those fruits. I want to also show a clip here of Beatriz Villaroel talking to Richard Dolan, and thanks to her, we found out what happened to Donald Menzel.
They didn't talk about the destruction of the plates. They only said he prevented, for a very few years, the collection of new astronomical data. And that was known as the Menzel gap. And when you read Wikipedia, it really makes it seem like we're talking just a couple of years in the 1950s. But in fact, it's much longer than that. It's a 15-year gap. 15 years.
So there is an astronomer who wrote about it, like in her autobiography. So
yeah, let's take a look at it.
Finally, I got the scans. I haven't gotten the whole book yet, but the scans. And she became a persona non grata because she tried to defend the plate collection. And so he was not very nice to her.
You could give her name, please?
Doris Hoplite.
Dr. Doris Hoplite.
And apparently he didn't even ask the astronomers what plates to destroy. He asked his secretary to go and destroy the plates. So,
Shannon Friedman, I hope you're watching from wherever you are, because I know that you were looking into this, and you didn't find about the Menzel gap, but we're going to talk about the Menzel gap. The Menzel gap started in 1952. In 1952, there was 2 weekends in a row where UFOs were flying over the Capitol, or the White House. People were freaking out. In my intro,
the so-called flying saucers.
That is due to the 1952 flybys. And what happened was, after that, Donald Menzel gets put, literally right after that, gets the position in Harvard as director of Harvard astronomy. And what does he do? I'll let Beatriz Villaroel tell you.
Dr. Chapley retired in 1952, and Donald Menzel became his successor. One of the first things Menzel did was to ask his secretary, whose previous job had been as personal manager for the Jordan Mars department store, to discard a third of the plates in the plate stacks in order to make room for more office space. When some astronomers took courage to object after many plates had been thrown out, he continued having plates removed from the stacks, but stored in the cellar under the 15-inch telescope dome. He had long plank shelves made and put so many plates on each shelf that the planks sagged in the middle in such a way that the upper shelves actually rested on top of the plates on the shelf below. Moreover, there was no concrete or other covering on the dirt floor. Although the foundation consisted of huge stone blocks, roots of the trees penetrated the walls and the humidity was high. Inevitably, the plates were doomed. The Harvard plate collection had been the largest in the world, probably the only one covering the sky from pole to pole, with some series dating back to 1882. How could any astronomer, regardless of his own speciality in research, wantonly destroy so high a percentage of plates that were vital to many research projects, especially for variable stars?
Mm-hmm.
So he destroys 1/3 of astronomical plates without mentioning anything to anybody. Super shady. And you had this other scientist, I think her name was Dorit, I'm missing it, but Beatriz Villaroel did say it. Hey, this is a crime to science. Why would you do this? And Beatriz Villaroel found in the astronomical plates some anomalies. We had nothing up there in 1952. Sputnik was the first Russian satellite that made it to space in 1957. So why was Donald Menzel destroying astronomical plates, which are just basically, scans of the sky, right? Of stars, whatnot, of the atmosphere and whatever. I might have said that kind of wrong, but I'm not an astronomer. Why was he destroying 1/3 of plates? And not only that, he prevented surveys, future surveys, until 1966. So they call this the Menzel gap, okay? From 1952 to 1966, what happened in 1966? The Condom Committee. The Condom Committee happened after the first UFO hearing due to a flap in Michigan in 1966. The people were freaking out and they were calling Congress, what do? We don't know what to do with these things. And they had a congressional hearing. And they put the scientific organization head by Mr. Condon. And Mr. Condon, Jesse Michaels explains. Jesse Michaels, says that he helped invent the secrecy law of 1946, the Atomic Energy 1946 Atomic Energy Act, which then evolved into the 1954 Atomic Energy Act, which is where the UFO secrecy is, which basically you have no oversight. Those people can do whatever they want, and that's where they hide anything that falls into, because if anything nuclear, so we know that UFOs have radiation, you know, they emit radiation and all that. If anything like that falls immediately into that category, that is classified higher than the atomic bomb. So how many coincidences do we need again? Because we got the MJ-12 coincidence. We have the 1950 to 1966 Menzel gap. And sorry. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. And I do want to correct Richard Dolan on something, because he did say that the Wikipedia did fix that. Now they're talking about the Menzel gap, and they mention the Menzel gap here. And so even Wikipedia, which is the worst source for UFOs, please do not use Wikipedia to look up anything on this topic. It's terrible. You have the guerrilla skeptics, but even the guerrilla skeptics, because it's a fact. Now, this is my last words. When you build something, the foundation must be solid. And if the first UFO debunker, not necessarily first, but the first elite UFO debunker is a weak link that's compromised, then the whole house of cards falls apart. So what does that mean? Something stinks.
Studied under Don Menzel. Don Menzel is the #1
skeptic,
UFO skeptic, debunker, but he's also rumored to be
the deepest in the know.
Condon has the same sort of kangaroo court process, and he gets his Q clearance stripped as well. And so it's this crazy thing where, you know, maybe it actually...
Guy Hoddle, what was his...
So he's investigating Condon. Oh, I missed that detail. So he's creating a dossier in the background on Condon, and Condon is getting his Q clearance stripped. So you have a UFO knowledgeable FBI agent creating a dossier on the guy who wrote up UFO secrecy. So he
can't make this stuff up.
Can't make it up. So Condon then doesn't have his Q clearance for the longest time till the Condon Commission in '66. He's out of the government. And this guy named Lou Branscombe comes to him. Lou Branscombe is on the Jason Advisory Committee, and he is studied under Don Menzel. Don Menzel is the #1
skeptic,
UFO skeptic, debunker, but he's also rumored to be
the deepest in the know.
On the Majestic 12 or whatever equivalent committee or whatever.
Stanton Friedman was a real actor.
So that's interesting. In the 1950s, a lot of scientists lost their clearance. Dr. Condon lost it in 1955. Then he regained it when he took over this project, which was the final blow to his study of UFOs. After that, there was no grants. Nobody wanted to look at this. The stigma was terrible. You basically ruined your career. And Menzel was on top of all of that. And it's kind of sad, you know, basically what we did was, you know, this Robert Oppenheimer, and we basically just kept a bunch of Nazis from Operation Paperclip. But that's a whole nother episode on its own. So hope you enjoyed.